Carlos Sainz started the 2024 F1 season with a bang, landing a podium at the Bahrain Grand Prix. He began in fourth place but quickly showed his brilliant racecraft, even after dropping a spot to Sergio Perez early on. Throughout the race, Sainz pushed hard, making some impressive moves, even overtaking his teammate Charles Leclerc not once but twice. Sainz ended up finishing just 2.5 seconds behind Perez, a feat made all the more impressive considering he was on harder, slower C1s and had to deal with misaligned steering from an early bump with Checo. Despite these challenges, Sainz kept up the pace and even looked like he might catch Perez towards the end. After the race, Sainz pointed out something interesting about the Red Bull RB20 cars. He said, "You guys need to consider that we've been testing here 3 days and I've been seeing that Red Bull degradation on soft, and it's exactly the same as ours on the hard. So as soon as I knew Red Bull had a new soft for the last stint and Checo had it, it's not like I went, okay, this is my chance. This means the Red Bull cars were just as good on soft tyres as others were on hard ones, making them really hard to beat in a race." Sainz, who was voted driver of the day, wasn't too surprised he couldn't catch Perez in the end. He had seen during testing how good the Red Bull cars were on their tyres. "I've seen the long runs they did on the C3 tyre in testing, and you could see that they basically have the same deg on the soft as what everyone has on the hard, so I wasn't getting too excited," he explained. He also talked about how tough it was being close behind another car without being able to use the DRS to get past. "Also, I was in a bit of an uncomfortable position because you're there in the 2-3 second margin, which is where you get all the dirty air, but you don't get the advantage of the DRS and the slipstream, so you're just sliding a bit more," Sainz said. Despite being within striking distance of Perez, the turbulent air made it tough for Sainz to get close enough to Perez to attempt a pass. "If I would have been within a second or maybe 5 seconds behind, I think on the hard tyre I could have maybe showed a bit more the true pace of the car and my pace today. But in that 2-3 second window is the worst place to be, and I could never mount any proper challenge on Checo today." It was clear to Sainz from the pre-season testing that Red Bull had an edge in terms of long-run pace, but he was pleasantly surprised by how close Ferrari was to Perez, especially considering Red Bull's historical strength at the Bahrain track. The stints on the tyres were telling. Perez's first stint on soft tyres lasted only 12 laps, while Max Verstappen managed to extend his to 17 laps. With 21 laps to go, Perez switched back to softs just a lap after Sainz had opted for hard tyres. Initially, Perez began to pull away, but Sainz found his rhythm and started to match Perez's pace. In the final 6 laps, Sainz was consistently quicker, but the gap remained at 2.7 seconds at the finish line. Reflecting on this, Sainz noted Red Bull's strategic use of the soft tyres, making them a formidable opponent. "When I saw the long runs of Max and Checo in FP2 and then the long runs of testing, there's no secrets," Sainz said. "We've been here 3 days. I knew they had a 3/4 advantage, maybe not half a second like George," Russell was saying, "depending on track conditions, but I knew it was going to be very difficult to beat the Red Bulls." The fact that Red Bull managed to preserve a set of new soft tyres for the final stint was a clear indication of their strategy and confidence. Sainz acknowledged this, saying they also kept a new soft, which shows a bit what the intentions and their plans were. "So I knew the Red Bulls today were going to be very, very difficult to beat. So to keep up with one of them and have the possibility to fight is already a good surprise." Moving on from Sainz's insights into the Bahrain Grand Prix, he sees a silver lining for Ferrari in future races, especially on tracks where tyre degradation isn't as critical. Sainz is optimistic, suggesting, "I think we were at one of their strongest tracks of the season with very high tyre deg at the rear. Hopefully, when we go to a more front-limited track and maybe better tarmac, our car will come alive and we will be able to mount a better challenge on Max for the win. This hope hinges on the Ferrari SF24's performance under different track conditions, which might play to its strengths." In Bahrain, Sainz emerged as Red Bull's closest competitor, showcasing his skill by finishing just seconds behind Perez and making significant on-track passes, including overtaking Leclerc and Mercedes' George Russell. While Leclerc faced noticeable challenges with his brakes, running off-track multiple times, Sainz's Ferrari seemed more stable. However, Sainz later revealed that he too had to manage brake issues during the race, although they weren't as troublesome as Leclerc's. Sainz described his experience. "Yes, the first stint and the beginning of the second stint, whenever we were in traffic, we were having a lot of brake vibrations, and the pedal at one point started to go long," he said in the FIA press conference. "So it was always a balancing act between, do I go for it and try to get rid of the dirty air and overtake people, or do I start saving my brakes because they're going to fail or something's going to happen?" By strategically cooling the brakes and managing the issue, Sainz was able to regain control and push forward. "I started saving by moving a bit on the straight to cool the side that it was getting hotter, and the vibration started to get better. And then I could start to make moves and move forward," he explained. "But as I said, the start wasn't great. The brakes were still a bit of a limitation for a bit. And then once everything settled, I could do my pace, do my overtakes, and go for the podium." This strategic approach allowed him to recover from a less-than-ideal start, overcome the limitations posed by the brakes, and secure his podium finish. During the race, there was a brief moment where it looked as if the two Ferraris were about to run into each other. Sainz talked about this moment, saying that it seemed more dramatic on TV than it actually was. The Spaniard assured everyone that he was in complete control during that time and had a good lead over Leclerc. This moment of on-track rivalry was just part of the race, and Sainz viewed his ability to maintain control and compete effectively with Leclerc as a positive sign. Leclerc, on the other hand, faced a tough race with significant brake issues. His car suffered from severe brake imbalance, causing him to lock up and veer off the track multiple times. Despite these challenges, Leclerc managed to finish in fourth place, just behind Sainz. The issues with Leclerc's car were so pronounced that Ferrari reported a 100-degree split between the front and rear brakes, contributing to an unusual handling imbalance. Leclerc shared his struggle during the race, noting that the brake problems worsened with each lap, making it difficult to predict and adjust his braking points. "It was impossible in the first 15 laps. The issue was getting a lot worse every lap," Leclerc added. "I was obviously basing my braking for turn 9-10 with the previous lap, which obviously fell too late all the time, but the issue was getting a lot worse. Every time I would brake 3 meters earlier, but I would still look up then at lap 15 or 20, the issue stabilized. The team told me on the radio that it was more than 100 degrees split between from front right and front left, which is huge. At that moment, I understood that the best thing I could do was just to bring the car home to the checkered flag. Honestly, all in all, considering that the issue didn't get any better throughout the whole race. We started to be more consistent when the issue didn't worsen and every lap, which was helping me to be more consistent." So what do you guys think about Ferrari's chances against the towering might of the RB20? Do you agree with Sainz and think they can maybe surprise Red Bull? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest F1 news.